I was so close to locking him in the laundry room. I was exhausted, and for the third time that night, our dog had dragged his heavy ceramic water bowl across the hardwood floor and dumped it on the nursery carpet. I thought he was being a brat, until I went to pick it up and saw him staring at the crib with a look of pure desperation. That's when I touched my son's forehead. He wasn't crying, and he wasn't waking up. He was burning hot and breathing in shallow, terrifying rasps. My dog wasn't making a mess. He was trying to give my son the one thing he was literally dying for. If you've ever brushed off a dog's strange habit until it suddenly made sense, stay with me. And if a mutt has ever tried to tell you something without making a sound, tell me in the comments. Stories like this are why people subscribe here. I'll tell this the way it happened. Not dramatically, just truthfully. At first it was annoying. The dog's water bowl was heavy, ceramic, wide, impossible to miss when it scraped across the floor. Every time we heard that sound at night, we knew exactly what it was. Scrape, pause, scrape again. By the time we reached the hallway, the bowl would be sitting just outside the baby's room. Water sloshed halfway onto the carpet. "Why does he keep doing this?" someone whispered. Exhausted, the dog would just sit there, not guilty, not playful, waiting. We carried the bowl back to the kitchen more than once. Each time the dog followed us, quietly, and the moment we turned away, he grabbed it again. Drag, scrape, pause. Always the same destination. The baby's room. At first, we thought it was coincidence, a habit, a quirk. But the dog never took a sip. He didn't drink from it, didn't guard it, didn't spill it by accident. He brought it in, set it down carefully near the crib, and sat beside it like he was placing something important exactly where it needed to be. That's when the unease started, because dogs don't repeat things like that for no reason. And standing in the doorway, watching him sit there in the dim light, eyes fixed on the crib, water bowl at his feet, I felt it. That quiet sense that the dog wasn't being stubborn. He was trying to solve a problem we hadn't noticed yet. The fourth time it happened I didn't pick the bowl up right away. I just stood there in the hallway, barefoot on the cold floor, watching the dog sit beside it. The baby was asleep. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the nightlight. The dog's posture wasn't tense, but it wasn't relaxed either. His back was straight, his head slightly lowered, his eyes fixed on the crib. Waiting. "Go on," I whispered, pointing back toward the kitchen. "Take it back." He didn't move. I stepped forward and nudged the bowl with my foot. Water sloshed softly. The dog flinched, not away from me, but toward the crib. That's when I noticed the sound, a faint, uneven noise coming from the baby. Not crying, not fussing, breathing, too fast, too shallow. I moved closer to the crib, my heart starting to race without fully understanding why. The baby's chest rose and fell rapidly, skin flushed and damp to the touch. "Hey," I whispered. "Hey." The baby didn't stir. The dog stood up immediately and nudged the water bowl closer to the crib with his nose. Clink. He looked at me, then back at the baby. "Oh my God," I murmured. I touched the baby's forehead. Hot. Too hot. The dog let out a small sound. Not a bark, not a whine. Something urgent and restrained. He nudged the bowl again, this time harder, pushing it until it bumped gently against the crib leg. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking now. "Okay, I see you." I lifted the baby out of the crib, panic fully breaking through as I felt how warm and limp his little body was. His breathing hitched, uneven, like he was struggling to catch up with himself. The dog paced in tight circles at my feet, then stopped abruptly and sat, eyes locked on the baby's face. "He's burning up," I said aloud, more to myself than anyone else. "Why didn't he crate it?" The dog nudged my leg, then turned and pawed at the bowl, splashing water onto the carpet. That was it. "He's dehydrated," I whispered. The realization hit hard and fast. The baby had been sick earlier, just a mild fever, nothing alarming. We'd been told to monitor, to keep him comfortable, to let him sleep. We hadn't noticed how much fluid he'd lost, how little he'd taken in before bed, but the dog had. I rushed to the kitchen and grabbed a syringe and electrolyte solution, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped it. The dog followed closely, then raced ahead, straight back to the baby's room, sitting beside the bowl like he'd left it there on purpose. I knelt beside the crib and carefully gave the baby small sips, praying he'd swallow. He did, once, then again. His breathing slowed just slightly. The dog exhaled a long, audible breath and lay down beside us, still watching. "You knew," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "You knew he needed water." I pressed the call button on my phone with trembling fingers, already explaining to the nurse what was happening. The dog didn't relax. Not yet. He kept his eyes on the baby the entire time, alert, focused, like he wasn't convinced the danger had passed. Because for him, it hadn't. The nurse told us to keep the baby awake and keep fluids going until we could be seen. I hung up and looked down at the bum. He was already standing. Not pacing, not panicking. Ready. Every time I leaned toward the crib with the syringe, he shifted closer. Every time the baby swallowed, he paused, watching the rise and fall of that tiny chest, like he was counting breaths. When I stopped to wipe the baby's face, the dog nudged the bowl again. Clink, not louder, not frantic, just enough to remind me. "Okay," I whispered. "I won't forget." As the minutes passed, the baby's breathing steadied a little. His skin cooled slightly under my palm. The worst of the panic ebbed, but the dog didn't change. He stayed alert, watching. That's when the memories started lining up. Small things, easy to dismiss at the time. Earlier that day, the dog had followed the baby everywhere. Not unusual, but closer than normal. When the baby played on the mat, the dog sat beside him instead of drifting off to his usual sunny spot. At one point, he'd nudged the baby's bottle toward us with his nose. We'd laughed. "He thinks he's helping." When the baby turned his head away from feeding, the dog had stood and stared at the bottle until we noticed. We'd brushed it off. That afternoon, when the baby spit up, the dog brought his bowl over once, just once, and we'd taken it back, assuming it was another strange habit. Now, standing in the dim nursery with a warm baby in my arms, I understood. He hadn't started that night. He'd been escalating. Each time we missed the message, he made it clearer. When the baby whimpered weakly, the dog barked once, short, sharp, forcing my attention back. "Good boy," I said, my voice trembling. "Thank you." I gave the baby another small sip. He swallowed and let out a quiet sigh. The dog finally sat, but he didn't lie down. The doctor told us later that dehydration in infants can creep up quietly. No dramatic crying, no obvious distress at first. Just faster breathing, hot skin, lethargy. Exactly what the dog had seen. Exactly what we hadn't. While we waited for the car to be warmed up, the dog carried the bowl again, this time setting it directly beside the door. Not to spill, to bring it with us. I grabbed a towel and placed it under the bowl to stop the water from sloshing. The dog watched closely, then sat beside it, satisfied. In the car, he positioned himself so he could see the baby's face the entire drive. Every red light, every turn, watching. At the hospital, when a nurse reached for the baby a little too quickly, the dog stood and blocked her path. Not aggressively, just enough to slow her down. "He's very protective," she said gently. "Yes," I replied, "and he's right." They checked the baby's vitals, started fluids, monitored him closely, and slowly, quietly, everything stabilized. When the doctor finally said, "You caught it in time," my knees nearly gave out. I looked down at the peak lying at my feet. He wasn't watching the room anymore. He was watching the baby. Still, always. Later, when we returned home and tucked the baby back into the crib, the dog picked up his bowl one last time and set it beside the crib. Carefully, he didn't spill a drop. Then he lay down beside it and closed his eyes. For the first time that night, he rested. We didn't sleep that night, not really. The baby slept, finally deeply, but every small sound pulled me upright. A sigh, a shift, the soft rustle of the sheet. Each time my eyes went first to the crib and then to the dog. He was awake every time, not standing, not pacing, sitting beside the water bowl, eyes steady, ears tuned to the room. The doctor's words echoed in my head. You caught it in time? Gustav. That was the part that made my stomach tighten, because when I replayed the day, I could see how easily we might not have. The dog hadn't started with the bowl. He'd started with Prishamani hovering closer than usual. Then he'd escalated to nudges, to blocking, to carrying the one thing he knew mattered most: water. Each step had been deliberate, each move a little louder than the last. And still, we'd needed the fourth time to understand. Sometime before dawn, the baby stirred and made a small sound. Not a cry, just a dry, half-formed noise. The dog stood immediately and nudged the bowl with his nose. Clink. I was on my feet before my mind caught up, checking the baby's temperature, offering another sip, counting breaths. The baby settled again. The dog sat. I realized then how thin the line had been, how quietly dehydration had crept in, how the signs had been there without shouting. Later that morning, after the sun came up and the house felt normal again, we cleaned the carpet. We put the bowl back in the kitchen. The dog followed us, watched. When we set the bowl down, he nudged it once, testing. I waited. He didn't pick it up. Instead, he walked back to the baby's room and lay down near the crib, still guarding. Throughout the day, I noticed how closely he watched feeding times. If the baby turned away too soon, the dog lifted his head. If the bottle stayed untouched too long, he stood. Once, when I got distracted and set the bottle down without offering more, he nudged my knee. I didn't brush it off this time. That afternoon, a friend stopped by. She laughed when she saw the water bowl by the crib. "He's got you trained now," she joked. I smiled, but my chest tightened, because I knew something she didn't. This wasn't training, it was responsibility. That evening, I sat on the floor beside the crib, watching the baby sleep. The dog lay nearby, chin resting on his paws, eyes half closed but never fully gone. I thought about how close it had come to being missed. No alarms, no dramatic cries, no obvious emergency, just a dog repeating himself in the only way he could, dragging a bowl across the floor, over and over, until we listened. That realization stayed with me, because it meant something uncomfortable. It meant that sometimes danger doesn't announce itself. It waits to see if someone is paying attention. And sometimes the only one who is the dog. If you're still listening right now, it's because you know how easily this could have been brushed off, how quiet danger can be. If a dog has ever tried to warn you in a way that didn't make sense at first, tell me in the comments. And subscribe, because this story isn't finished yet. After that night, the world narrowed. Not to the house, not to the routine, to one dog, one baby. Everything else faded into background noise. The dog stopped roaming altogether. He didn't drift from room to room anymore. He stayed near the crib, moving only when the baby moved. If the baby slept, he lay down. If the baby stirred, he sat up, always watching, always listening. I noticed how his attention had changed. He wasn't tracking toys or footsteps or sounds from outside. His focus had sharpened to one thing: breath, the rhythm of it, the pauses between. If the baby's breathing changed even slightly, the dog noticed first. Once the baby shifted in his sleep and let out a dry little sound. I barely registered it. The dog stood. I was on my feet instantly. The baby settled again. The dog sat. That's when I realized how much I'd started following him instead of my own senses, and I was grateful for it. Feeding times became deliberate, counted, measured. The dog watched every sip. If the baby pulled away too soon, the dog lifted his head. If the bottle stayed full longer than usual, the dog nudged my leg. No barking, no whining, just presence. One afternoon, I tried to move the water bowl back to the kitchen again, thinking maybe things had returned to normal. The dog followed me. The moment I set it down, he picked it up again and walked straight back to the baby's room. Carefully, not spilling a drop. I didn't stop him this time. I set a mat under it and left it there. The dog lay down beside it, satisfied. That night, I sat in the chair by the crib and watched them both. The baby slept deeply now, color back in his cheeks, breathing even. The dog's eyes were half closed, but his ears twitched with every small sound. I thought about how different this could have ended, how easy it would have been to get annoyed one more time, to take the bowl back again, to assume the dog was just being a dog. Instead, he'd been counting something we weren't: loss, loss of fluid, loss of strength, loss of margin. He'd been filling the gap the only way he knew how: water, availability, proximity. The simplicity of it struck me hard. No drama, no heroics, just repetition, just insistence, just refusing to let the message go unheard. At some point, the baby sighed softly and turned his head. The dog shifted closer, placing himself between the crib and the doorway, guarding. I rested my hand on his back. "You can sleep," I whispered. He didn't move. Not yet. Because for him, the job wasn't finished until the risk was gone completely. And in that quiet room with a water bowl beside the crib and a dog holding watch, I understood something that changed the way I look at warnings forever. They don't always come loudly. Sometimes they scrape across the floor in the dark, again and again, until someone finally listens. The moment that finally explained everything came 2 nights later. Not dramatic, not loud, quiet in the way danger usually is when it's almost missed. The house was dark. The baby had gone down without fuss. The fever was gone, appetite improving. Everyone kept saying the same thing: "He's fine now." I wanted to believe it. The dog was lying beside the crib, chin on the floor, eyes open but soft. The water bowl sat where it had been since that night, close enough to touch without reaching. I sat in the chair nearby, exhausted, eyelids heavy. At some point I drifted. I don't know how long I slept. Minutes, maybe. What woke me wasn't crying. It was the sound of ceramic sliding. Scrape. I opened my eyes to see the dog standing, water bowl in his mouth again. He dragged it closer, just inches this time, and set it down with care. Then he nudged my knee, harder than before. I blinked, disoriented. "What is it?" He didn't bark. He didn't whine. He turned and pressed his nose gently against the crib rail. I stood instantly. The baby's breathing had changed, not fast like before, shallow, uneven. I touched his cheek, dry. His lips parted slightly, but there was no sound. My heart slammed into my ribs. "Oh no," I whispered. "No, no!" The dog barked once, sharp, final. I scooped the baby up and felt it immediately. The weight felt wrong, too still, too heavy. "He's not taking in enough," I said aloud, hands shaking. "He's not." The dog grabbed the bowl again and pushed it toward me, water sloshing over the edge onto my bare feet. Cold, real, urgent. I grabbed the syringe and solution, hands moving on instinct now, and offered the baby small sips. At first nothing. The dog paced once, just once, then stopped directly in front of us and sat, eyes locked on the baby's face. "Come on," I whispered, my voice breaking. "Please." The baby swallowed, a little, then another. His chest lifted deeper this time. Air filled his lungs. I collapsed back into the chair, clutching him to me, sobbing quietly so I wouldn't startle him. The dog let out a long breath and lay down beside us, his head resting against my foot. He stayed awake, watching. When we saw the doctor again later that morning, they confirmed it. Another dip in hydration overnight. Subtle enough to miss, dangerous enough to matter. "You caught it early," the doctor said. Again. I didn't answer. I just looked down at the Maui sitting at my feet. He looked back up at me, calm, certain, like this was never luck. When we returned home, the water bowl stayed where it was. No one moved it. No one questioned it. Days passed, then weeks. The baby recovered fully, stronger, louder, hungrier than ever. Life slowly returned to something like normal. But some things never went back. I never ignore repetitive behavior now. I never assume annoying means meaningless. And I never dismiss a boy who insists. The dog eventually stopped dragging the bowl. One night, without ceremony, he picked it up and carried it back to the kitchen. Set it down. Then he returned to the baby's room and lay down by the door. The message had been delivered. The danger had passed. That night, as I watched them both sleep, one small chest rising steadily, one larger body finally relaxed, I felt something settle deep in my chest. Gratitude. Because we didn't just have a family dog. We had a guardian who understood the problem before we understood the words for it. He didn't know about dehydration, or fevers, or thresholds. He knew one thing: the baby needed water, and he refused to stop saying it. If this story made you rethink the small things you brush off, if it reminded you that warnings don't always come loudly, subscribe so stories like this don't go unheard. And tell me in the comments, has a dog ever tried to warn you in a way that only made sense later? We thought the dog was making a mess, but he was measuring survival, one bowl of water at a time.